All right, if you want a new car and you clicked on this video hoping for some justification, we're gonna give you all kinds of really smart ways to justify this to your wife, or if you're the wife, to your husband. And if you wanna make a smart financial decision, we're gonna actually scare you straight about why you need to get a used car. So first of all, let's talk about the used car because I think the benefits are obvious. It's cheaper.
Right, exactly. Most brands of cars, they're going to have the majority of their depreciation, because the depreciation of a car is kind of a curve. It's not usually a straight line thing. Most of that's going to happen in the first few years. I find with a lot of cars, it's actually more like 5 years before it starts to kind of level off and you get the best bang for your buck. You also get an older used car, which brings in some uncertainty.
And that's why the model and brand of car makes a huge difference.
Huge.
Because if we're talking about a Mercedes, we're talking about a Lexus, it goes and then it starts leveling off. Because if you're buying a G-Wagon for $200,000, you want it new, right? And so it's going to depreciate like crazy those first couple years.
But I find that like Honda and Toyota, just solid cars for commuter cars, family cars, minivans, things like that. Those particular brands are known for their long life and reliability. And so a 3-year-old Toyota is a couple thousand bucks cheaper than a brand new one. Mm-hmm. In which case, many times I'm willing to go new because then I can get exactly the features I want. And then again, of course, all the other reasons that we'll talk about here in a minute. So there's some solid reasons to buy used, save tons of money.
Now, I generally like buying, if I can find a 2-year-old car, whatever, that's usually what I'm going to want. You have plenty of money to buy a whole dealership worth of cars.
And yet I just bought a used 3-year-old minivan for my family because I found...
Was it tan?
No, actually, it's gray. And I've seen like 4 other minivans in my neighborhood that look exactly the same. Somebody was pulling up the other day and I was like, oh, that's my wife. No, it was not. I felt super awkward.
It's the same thing. Yeah, doesn't matter. I mean, Honda Odyssey, who cares?
It's a gray Honda Odyssey. That's very vanilla, but anyway.
All right, now let's talk about the new car. So there can still be the case, like we talked about, that if you can afford the luxury of spending a couple thousand more to get it brand new, cool. Even when, I paid cash for it, but I bought a 2012 Nissan Sentra when it was brand new, and it was the first car I bought, but it was the very base model, and I paid cash for it, but we still didn't have a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it made sense for us because it was a brand new cheap car, $14,000 for a new car.
Yeah.
And I knew that we could reliably drive that thing for a lot of years.
And that reliability is the key there. And if you've read Jim's book, you know the story.
This one that we have a
few copies of.
A lot of extra copies of, by the way.
If you've read that book, you've heard Jim's story about dealing with unreliable used cars. And so that's very, very important to you. And reliability is important. And for that reason, being able to afford a brand new car gives you some guarantees, right? You have a warranty. If there's anything wrong with that car as it came from the manufacturer, you can take it back. Soon as you buy it used, sometimes those warranties are transferable, sometimes they're not, and they usually only last up to about 3 years. So if you buy a 3-year-old used car from a dealership that's not providing a warranty, you're kind of on your own. And if you are buying it from a dealer that provides a warranty, they're charging you way too much for it. So there's a solid reason to go buy new.
And if you are going to go buy a car from a dealership, please watch our video about how to not get ripped off by the car dealerships. There's some very, very important information in that video. But usually somebody who buys a new car for the first time just had car problems. Usually something happened and you're like, I can't get to work, and you're freaking out and it's impacted your life. I just need a new one. You don't need a new car to get to work reliably. A 2-year-old car will get you to Dairy Queen so you can go to work, right? You're gonna be okay. And I think that's sometimes the recency bias that we have. It's like, I'm having car problems. This is a major stress. I can end this by going and buying a new car. Right. And so that's great, but it's also pretty stupid most of the time if you haven't afforded that luxury. And so something that colors this entire discussion here is when we're talking about, yeah, it can make sense to buy a new car sometimes, we're talking about paying cash for that new car.
Yes.
If you don't have cash to pay for that new car, there is no situation ever that you should buy a new car. Only ever pay cash for a new car. Otherwise, you are not buying it. Otherwise, you're going to be paying debt for the rest of your life. You're wasting money on interest.
You're always basically renting a car, right? When you go buy a new car, because that depreciation curve is so steep most of the time, you drive it off the lot and you're upside down on the car. And by the way, you may have a warranty, but if somebody hits you, like in a motor accident, and you are upside down on that car, guess how much their insurance company's usually going to cover? The amount that it's worth. And now it's a used car. And you actually lose money. You take on
You're
risk
writing
when you do
a
that.
check
Yeah.
and taking a car to the dump on the same day.
Yeah. And trust me, it happens. My dad's an insurance agent. He's seen all the worst. And so there are some significant risks to buying a new car.
And buying a car that same day.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to just throw a grenade in your family finances. That's how
buy
you
it.
do it.
Yeah.
You buy a car, you're going to be underwater on it. If anything happens at that moment, you may be writing a $10,000 check to the company that gave you the loan. You're taking a car to the dump, and now, you don't
less
have a
money
car.
to go
You
buy
got to
a new
get
one.
to work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a time bomb. You are playing with fire.
I will also make the statement that if you want to buy a 2-year-old car that has the bells and whistles that you want, and you don't have cash for it, you should still not make that purchase. And so there's a important level of responsibility here that you need to take upon yourself. If you can't afford to buy a 2 or 3-year-old car that's going to be highly reliable, you probably need to consider something even older that's probably going to be a little bit less reliable, because the risk of that car breaking down is a smaller financial risk than you take on if you spend far more than you can afford. If you go take on a car payment that now you have to make every month, that causes more financial risk for your family than the possibility that I might have to go take it to a mechanic to have it
Yeah,
fixed.
and think about that. So you say, I don't want to go buy a $1,000 car because it could die, right? So instead, I'm going to go buy a $7,000 car and I'm going to get a loan until that car dies. And now, the grenade went off again, right? No car, and we have to go do something. And it's $7,000 on a car, that's going to happen.
In my high school years, I personally went through 2 $1,000 cars. That was like 3 years, and I went through 2 of them. That kind of stuff happens, and you know what? It's okay. Because what it'll allow you to do is actually save up for the next car. If you don't take out a loan, you now have that entire amount that you would have spent on that car payment, that if you're responsible and proactive about it, you can be saving that money, setting it aside. And that way you can always pay cash. Or you can do the whole flipping model where you go buy a car for $1,000, sell it to somebody who could use it a little bit more than you could for $1,500. Now you go buy a $1,500 car and just always have your car for sale. It's actually kind of a cool way to make some money and upgrade car.
I was at my house and there were workers there, a painting company, and one of their guys says, "Oh man, you got a Tesla, that's so cool. Now you'll never have to pay for gas again." And I was like, yeah, but let me stop you. This is not a financial choice. You do not buy a Tesla because then you'll never have to pay for gas again.
Yeah.
You buy it because it's a cool car, right? And the cheapest car I could buy costs $2,000, and you just go buy a new one every time it dies. You look through Craigslist and you look for the perfect commuter car. It's running, and we'll see how long. Sometimes it'll last you 5 years. Sometimes it may die sooner.
Yeah.
But you can buy a lot of $2,000 cars for the price of that Tesla.
My college car that I bought with cash, I used for all of college and a couple years beyond that, at which point it was time we started having kids, so it was time to upgrade to a minivan. And I sold the car for about half of what I paid for it. I got great use out of that car, and I didn't have to spend that much to buy it. And so if you're in a position right now where you just don't have the finances to go buy something new, you don't have the cash to go buy something really nice but used, it's okay. Everybody, almost everybody, goes through that phase of their life. And for some people, that phase lasts longer than for others. But if you go through that phase responsibly and don't take on that car payment, you set yourself up to be able to move out of that phase of your life.
And you can go pay cash for a Tesla.
Yes.
But if you're throwing these grenades and saying, I hope this doesn't blow up all the time, eventually it's going to blow up. And you'll just never get there. So just be responsible. A car is not going to complete you.